The name Sucker. Cocksucker. Come on, guys. Fix the teleprompter. Let's do it again. The name's Head. Dick Head. Can we do this for real now, people? Let's do this. The name's Khan. Ramiz Khan. We are reviewing Casino Royale today, people. And today we are reviewing the greatest James Bond film of all time, Casino Royale. It is not a matter of opinion when someone says that Casino Royale is the best James Bond film of all time. It is fact. There's literally nothing wrong with this film. I remember once me and a friend had a conversation about who would win in a fight between Daniel Craig's James Bond and Christian Bale's Batman, and both of us agreed that James Bond would literally mop the floor with Batman, which is pathetic because he's Batman. But that's what I'm getting at. This James Bond is a beast. And in the very beginning, we are told that he is a beast when he's not wearing a suit and he's wearing a shirt like this. We are treated to one of the best action sequences of the decade in a parkour chase. It showcases not only James Bond's brute strength, but also his wit and quick thinking. It's something you've never seen in a James Bond film before or even after. I mean, the Sam Mendes films did have some really cool action set pieces. The explosion from Spectre was really awesome, and the helicopter fight was really awesome. Skyfall had some cool stuff as well, but it never really reached the heights that this did. So right off the beginning, we're hooked. It's a perfectly shot and edited scene as well, making sure the audience is aware of the geography of both the guy running from James Bond and James Bond himself. Location is very important to me in an action scene. This is one problem I have with all the Transformers films, that you don't know what's going on and where it's going at. But Martin Campbell, the director of this film, understands that, and their effort has been made all of the time to make sure that the audience is acclimated with the locations of both James Bond and the Freerunner. But what is the plot of this film? This plot is kinda driven by the villain, Le Chiffre, an accountant to the world's terrorists, played by Mads Mikkelsen, an exceptional actor who got his break a couple years later in the exceptional TV show Hannibal. I suggest you watch that. So James Bond has to stop this man. How? By playing a game of poker. They set up that both Le Chiffre and Bond are excellent at the game early on in separate scenes, which makes the poker tournament really fun. By the way, speaking of poker, I have no idea what poker is. I don't know how to play it. I know it's a card game, but it doesn't really matter as the game is kinda second fiddle to the plot, which is a good thing. They kinda avoid the rules of the game. But every time something important happens, there's music to make sure you know that something important happened. The camera gets closer and closer to make sure you know something important happened, like when James Bond, gets a royal flush, I think you called, and he beats Le Chiffre. It's very well done to make sure audiences who are not acclimated with the game of poker understand what's going on. But another thing to make sure that the plot is moving forward as well is how there are sub-narratives between that poker game. Le Chiffre and James Bond are constantly mocking each other by glaring and subtle jabs at each other. When Bond tells him, "I think I'll start getting nervous when I start weeping blood." And there's physical tension as well. Bond gets freaking poisoned. And then, of course, there's one of the other best parts of this film, Vesper Lynd, the greatest Bond girl of all time, played by the beautiful Eva Green. She starts off as somewhat of a sidekick to James Bond and organically morphs into his love interest. All the dialogue scenes between James Bond and Vesper are excellent. From the first time they meet, when they take subtle jabs at each other's personality and past, or what it could be, and until the end of the game as well, and after the game as well. But the dialogue stays true to the personalities as well. Both of these people are alphas. James Bond is an alpha, and so is Vesper Lynd. They're not to be outdone. This is one of my favorite scenes when Vesper says this one compliment, which could be considered the greatest compliment a man could get. Look what James Bond replies with.
"I just want you to know that if all there was left of you was your smile and your little finger, you'd still be more of a man than anyone I've ever met."
That's because you know what I can do with my little finger.
I have no idea.
But you're aching to find out.
I wish to have an exchange as intimate as that once in my life. And that's what makes it so tragic when you watch this romance and the sequel of this film, Quantum of Solace. These characters had a believable romance because we see them slowly learning to comprehend each other and opening themselves up organically to each other. And we know that there was physical attraction as well from the very first scene that they had. Again, compare this romance to a bad romance in Anakin and Padme. Anakin and Padme were being told to like these characters. Why? Because they're pretty and they're always set in these beautiful locations. They must be in love. Not the case in James Bond. There's actual character building done over here. It's very interesting to me that this film is like 4 different films. The first act is a straight up action story. The second act is a mixture of a sports story and a romantic story. And the third act is a revenge story after the game is over. But it never gets overwhelming because these characters are legitimately interesting. I want to know what's going to be the next pain. But it never gets overwhelming because these characters are legitimately interesting and I do want to follow them. I want to know what's going to happen with Le Chiffre. I want to know what's James Bond's next step. I want to know what's going to happen with Vesper next. Great action, excellent characters, and a very, very memorable villain makes this the greatest James Bond film of all time. And not to be undone, Daniel Craig is the best James Bond of all time. It's just so great to see a man with such a great reputation of badassness actually commit into hand-to-hand fighting and a torture scene as well. 5 out of 5 for Casino Royale. I friggin' love this film and I never hesitate to watch it completely whenever it's on TV. If you haven't seen Casino Royale yet, what's wrong with you? Go see it. It's been 10 years since it was out. Holy crap, it's been 10 years since Casino Royale was out. I was friggin' 14 when it came out. Boy, do I feel old. Anyway, people, if you enjoyed this review, please hit that free subscribe button. As I said, the keyword is free. And if you enjoyed this a lot, I'm not going to ask you to share this, but I will ask you to talk about me in your friend circle. Tell your friends, hey, there's this guy named Ramiz. He talks a lot about movies, and he's pretty good at it, if you thought I am good. And if you want to connect with me, I am on Twitter and Snapchat. The lower third should be coming in right now. Follow me on Twitter and Snapchat. If you just want to have a chat, I love to talk with my subscribers. And until next time, remember to love yourselves.